More guns? So that's what this is. A hunting party.
Well, what did you expect us to do? Look at it through a telescope?
Hi, I'm Sean.
And I'm Adam.
And this is SasqWatch.
I must leave you now.
We continue our expedition into the Bigfoot filmography to try to figure out what's really out there. How are you feeling going into this one?
I mean, I'm more excited for this one than I have been for others because we've got this is a Hammer film. That's like a notable...
Yeah.
I mean, even if they're notable for their like lower budget kind of movies, at least people like them. There's a following there.
Yeah, if there are like pillars in the Bigfoot film temple, this is definitely one of them. It's one of the most well-known, well-liked...
oldest.
Yeah, oldest.
So it kind of helps to set the stage a little bit for some of the other stuff.
In a double capacity, we need you with us. What do you say, Doc?
Chances are, if you're interested in any of these movies, this is going to be one of the ones that you should seek out. Because I'm actually glad that I own the Blu-ray of this. I'm excited for it to live on my shelf. And I can't say that about some of the other ones.
Hey, is that chocolate? Huh?
So yeah, we're going into this episode. I'd seen it before. I knew that I liked it. I had a really good hunch that you were going to like it. So it's just rare for us to get to go into one of these generally like, hey, like this is going to be fun. This is... Right. So yeah, I'm excited that we got to do that because it's not going to happen again for a while.
Hey, Tom, let's get some action. Why do we just sit around?
I'm going to start by saying for a long time, this came out in 1957. I thought this was the first official Bigfoot or Yeti film. Because before this, I think that we're going to find out eventually if the film White Pongo counts or not. Because there had been films about the possibility of a missing link before. But this time period was when you first started to see them just be Bigfoot or the Yeti. I think the Yetis were the 50s ones, and then I think the 70s is when we started saying Bigfoot in movies.
Yeah, I feel like earlier on there might be more of less of an like distinction between like Bigfoot and like Ape Man, because I feel like that was a more popular thing at an earlier point in time. At some point in this show,
we're going to properly define when the Bigfoot film actually started and where the line is between just a gorilla movie and a Bigfoot movie. Because, like, we've said that King Kong's not SasqWatch, right? It's not.
He's not.
But I do think that that's what led to this eventually. I think there's too many things in common between the story of King Kong and our legend of Bigfoot. Like, there's got to be some threads there. So we're gonna eventually figure out what the first one was. But I know that before this film, in 1954, there was a film called The Snow Creature, and that's definitely about the Yeti. So that's now my hunch for the first official movie. To this movie, this is a Hammer horror film from the 50s. They're a British company that's made lots of wonderful films. I'm a big fan of Hammer horror. For the way I got into Hammer movies was in the 50s and 60s. They kind of just did remakes of the classic Universal monsters. So there's like a Hammer Dracula and a Hammer Frankenstein and a Hammer Mummy, and there's a Hammer Werewolf, I believe. And they did other stuff too. There's one about a Gorgon that I really like. I think it's called The Gorgon. But yeah, they're notable for like a lot of Christopher Lee starring roles, Peter Cushing in a lot of these. He's in our movie today.
Better roots and plants under the snow, too. It's probably fairly adaptable, like man.
Man, what you're suggesting roughly is that this might be some kind of a missing link.
I've only seen a handful, maybe less than that, of Hammer films, and I enjoyed this one about as much as I've enjoyed the others. And I don't think I've seen really any of the ones that people would say like are the very best ones, and I'm sure that
it's hard to get a consensus on what the very best Hammer ones are. I think a lot of people would point to like their version of Dracula or the Mummy. Those are two are the ones I really like. There's a lot of weird ones once they got into the 70s. They kept doing strange things to Dracula.
Dracula was the most fearsome being the screen has ever seen. Today, tonight, you could be Dracula's next victim.
This movie starts, and the first thing that you see is a really, really cool shot of the mountains. And pretty immediately, I was like, this is nice.
Yeah, I can see why this kind of film helped launch Hammer into what they were able to become, just because the production value here.
Yeah,
they went to the mountains.
They did
tell they went to the mountains. I don't know if they went to those mountains, but they went to mountains.
Yeah, there's some really, really cool. Like I said, I'm glad I have the Blu-ray because it looks
some really pretty shots in there. It's a nice looking movie.
It's a classy movie. It was nice to get a classy movie about a Yeti.
So this movie is about a doctor and a professor, botanist, scientist,
botanical
doctor.
He's a botanical man.
Yeah, and his wife, and the first doctor's wife, that all go, and the first doctor is Peter Cushing.
John
Rawlinson. And then we had Helen Rawlinson, his wife, and Peter Fox, the botanist.
Here, boys, just made us a present. Pick of his collection of dried plants.
That's wonderful.
So they come to the Himalayas under the guise, Rawlinson led them there, under the guise that they're going to be looking for some rare plant or something.
Well, yeah, he's been up there. I get the sense that he's been up at this Tibetan temple for a while because he's got a rapport with the Lama. Right. They're talking about he's gifting him some cool plant. He's like, here's another one of our really interesting plants. And Peter Cushing's like, I love plants. He's leafing through it, looking at it, talking about it.
Yes, it's a variety of Nardostatus jacomantis. An uncatalogued variety.
The llama, and it's, like we said, it's very British, so the llama's played by a dude named Arnold.
Yeah, I didn't look into this for very long, but immediately, I when I looked it up a minute ago, it doesn't seem like a llama is a position that more than one person ever holds.
Yeah.
So I guess this guy's the Dalai Lama. I didn't see note, but like I said, I didn't look very hard. That was a quick thing that I checked before we started this, but I'm not so sure that's just a title that anybody has, and this guy didn't strike me as the leader of all of those people or anything. I mean, that area, sure, but...
Let's just say it's not a very accurate representation of Tibetan monks. So the plot is that this botanical professor and his troupe have been living at this Tibetan temple in the Himalayan mountains. And one day the Lama's just like, hey, I know that your American friends are coming up here on this expedition. What's up with that? And he doesn't kind of a way that makes you think, is he psychic? Why does this guy know that this other man's coming here? And Peter Cushing, or his name was John Rawlinson, Dr. Rawlinson's just that's my friend Tom. He's coming up here just on a casual expedition.
He said it was his friend Tom. The man's name is Tom Friend.
I think they at least were friendly with each other. They have a rapport. They got to that point, but they're smoking cigarettes together. They're talking about how they've known each other before.
Oh, I guess. It seemed to me, I guess that's true. I think maybe they bonded over their desire to find the Abominable Snowman.
Yeah.
You the head man here? You speak English? Where's our guide? Hey, Kosang!
He's picking up the rear.
Yeah, he gets outed as being interested in the myth of the Yeti, and the Lama is just don't do it. He's very much just you shouldn't go, your friend shouldn't go, you guys shouldn't do this at all. And he does it in a very sinister kind of way where you're just well, there's probably something up there.
Yeah, he doesn't tell his initial friend, the botanist Peter, that came with him, and he doesn't tell his wife, and he doesn't expect either of them to go on the expedition either. He wants to leave them there.
But we're going. And if it's humanly possible, we're going to find that creature.
I'll come.
Don't worry, he'll be all right. We'll look after him. He'll be just...
And the group does show up, and the group that shows up is Tom Friend, the leader, his American friend Ed, who's a hunter.
Yeah, Ed Shelley.
Yeah, Ed Shelley, and then the other guy, Andrew
McNee.
Andrew McNee.
Who they also called Jock. We did not realize that those were the same person for a while. We thought that there were two other guys, but they turned out to be the same person.
Once again, if you were writing one of these movies, if you pick a character's name, don't have people call them something else. Don't be like, his name's Andrew, but everyone calls him Jock.
Hey, Kusang!
I'm here, mister.
Get the stores undercover. Take care of the ponies.
Is this in our honor?
I don't know.
Hey, Jock, stick close. These guys will eat you.
Mr. Friend, I'm very glad to meet you.
Then the group departs, so it's a group of 5 people. Dr. Rollison, Tom Friend, Ed Shelley, Andrew McNee, and their guide, Kusong.
Who is, they had a lot of guides leading up to the temple, but they left most of them there so they guide him back, so that they'd have a smaller party to try and get close to the Abominable Snowman. That was why Tom felt like people had failed in the past, because they had too large of a group, which makes sense.
Yeah, I was like, oh, cool, we got some thinkers in the group.
Oh, come on, sing! John Brown's body lies a mourning in the grave.
Everybody's kind of well-defined, too, because, like, Dr. Rollison is really interested in the Yeti. He's got all of his notes, and he's like, I think I know how big his footprint is, and I think I know how tall he should be.
And how much he weighs and stuff like that.
He's like a big nerd. He's just really excited to go and find out if this thing exists.
Right, and then he's constantly kind of developing theories about it as they go, and, like, I mean, they do more talking about Bigfoot in this movie than they do in most of them. They do a lot more, like, critical thinking about this stuff than most of them. Like, maybe I think any other movie we've watched.
Yeah, I would say Dr. Rollison and Prudence from Erotic Adventures of Prudence would get along. They would both have something to talk about if they ever met.
They both want to see the good in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's smarter than her. I think that this movie's got a much smarter explanation for Bigfoot. I think it'd be hard-pressed for another movie to come up with a better explanation, to be honest.
I found what I wanted. Evidence of a possible food supply. Type of moss. Highly nutritious. You mean it's food? It might be.
The basic plot is the group of 5 goes up into the mountains, and then every now and then we check in with B-plot, and that's Helen and Foxy, who he's referred to.
Yeah, that's
in his little sweater.
Fox. And yeah, it's mostly just them, like, being mad that he's gone, or
worrying about
to deal
him
with all these guides that haven't been paid that want to get paid.
Yeah, Foxy basically is just like the most British man ever. He just, like, every scene he's like being rude to the local people, storming into the llama's personal, like, chambers, and then Helen just can't bear it. Every scene Helen is just like, oh, John is in danger.
You're getting upset about something that might
John, I don't want you even to do this.
But we don't
I can't bear it, John.
So we might as well just skip forward. The thing they eventually end up doing is deciding to just go look for John. And so they take, like, 3 guides with them or something, and they...
4.
Okay. And they push off to go look for John, but that doesn't ever really result in much.
Yeah, so the main group, they're going up the mountain. I think they fight some bandits briefly.
Yeah, that was... They get, there's some bandits they see, and they're like, they're going somewhere else, but then later they start shooting at them, but they run away, and then we never see them again.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a tedious part of the movie, where they're climbing, there's scenes of them walking and climbing, and it helps that the movie looks so cool.
Yeah.
But they're also, you're just like, all right, let's get there. They get to the first hut, they have to talk at the first hut.
I think I wrote somewhere, like, we're 1/3 of the way into the movie and there's no Yeti yet, and then later on I wrote we're 2/3 into the movie and there's not been a Yeti yet, except for only a hand at that point.
Yes,
we
most
don't really ever see much. We only see them like all together like one time at the end of the movie. So they actually appear less often here than in most of our movies, but they talk about them so much more that we know more about them.
This creature may have an affinity for man, something in common with ourselves. Let's remember that before we start shooting. Sure.
Is he getting delirious?
The first like half of the movie, it's mostly Dr. Rawlinson kind of figuring out what their true intentions are, because they like get up there and he's like, oh, we have all this like equipment to hunt and trap animals, and Ed is just this like, Ed was really rude and just racist and mean the whole time. He's the kind of guy who they're just like, Ed, you can't shout out here, you're gonna cause an avalanche, and Ed's like, that's ridiculous. And you're like, come on, Ed, you know, kindergartners in Texas know how to start an avalanche. Come on, man.
Hey, Jock! Spread out! Don't crowd 'em! Avalanche!
Yeah, I think all of them, I think they're there because they all have their own kind of reason for why they want to be out here. You've got Ed, who like seems to want the glory of like hunting or
I love to kill, because Ed's one of those short guys. It's just like, oh, I'm a big man, I could shoot an elephant.
Oh, Tom, we'll dig out the sledge.
You've got a sledge?
Yeah, but it's not for him.
Well, what's it for then?
Listen, Doc, this expedition cost a lot of money. I'm not going back empty-handed.
And then we've got Andrew McNee, who's like encountered the Yeti in the past and like has become kind of obsessed. With finding it and seeing it.
And when the whole evidence of these theories is based on a few footprints in the snow.
Have you ever seen these footprints, Mr. Parker?
I have not.
I have.
Where? On the Rakaposhi Glacier. With a climbing party 2 years ago, I found a line of fresh footprints like human ones, only bigger and far broader.
You didn't see what made them?
I followed them for a mile or so, and then they finished on a bare rock face. It was just long enough to get a sense of what I might be tracking.
You're an impressionable man, Mr. McNee.
He saw some footprints, and the rest of his life.
He said he heard it or something, and he's like,
I paid to come on the trip. And Peter Cushing is just like, that's a terrible idea. You might hurt yourself out here.
They talk about how he's like not a good climber, and he does almost fall at one point, and like.
Well, he steps in one of Ed's traps because Ed's an idiot. He just like left it in the snow and didn't tell them. And then when Dr. Rolston's like, you idiot, why did you do that? Why wouldn't you tell us? And he's just like, oh, it's fine. It's not meant to like cut your foot off. You're like, shut up, Ed. Sure.
Did you set this? What do you think? Without warning us? You want to put a flag on it or something? Did I know you was coming this way? Get him free! Okay, get your foot out. Oh, he's not hurt bad. This is my improvement on a bear trap. It grips but doesn't tear. Didn't even bite through the boot.
Of all the idiotic maniac ideas.
Well, they get up to like second base camp.
Right.
And that's where the rest of the movie kind of happens. And that's when the spooky things kind of start to happen. And here's where you and I kind of disagree. I think that in this film, the Yetis have clairvoyant powers and are able to communicate telepathically with the human beings. And you disagree on that.
Yeah, I think there's no evidence of that. I think the only mention of clairvoyance or anything like that in the film is in reference to the monks themselves.
Yes, okay. There's the mystery of, does the Lama have powers, which I think he does. And then there's the question of what is going on with the Yetis communicating, because I'd say there's definitely evidence in the movie. So the first time it happens is they're hiking up the mountain, and Andrew says that he hears voices, and we don't hear them. And Andrew starts to like try to follow them and gets confused. Later on, Andrew again is hearing voices and cries, and he kind of goes into like a comatose trance because of what's going on, and they think that he's like
extra sensitive to the Yeti because of his previous experience with not even being close to it.
Dr. Rollison's like, he can't be near the Yeti, he's just like, he's too
sensitive. He said he was extra sensitive to the presence of the Yeti or something like that.
Yeah, so that's evidence.
Weird. I guess that is some evidence.
Later on,
I just took him to be like kind of a crazy guy. way. That's the way that I read that character.
All right, McNee, all right. Go to sleep, old boy. You're fine. McNee, did you hear what I said? McNee.
He's almost in a condition of trance.
Trance?
This is the way I found him after the thing had been here.
What are you getting at?
I'm not sure.
I guess we'll just, like, hit them as they come. So that's the first thing that I think is happening. I think they're talking to Andrew, and then he gets up in a trance, goes outside, and tries to climb up a mountain, and then he falls to his death. And I think that they led him, he's like Freddy Krueger when he, like, took that little boy by his veins and walked him off the building. That's basically what the Yetis did to him. So I think they killed him.
Right, and I think Andrew just kind of went crazy and, like, accidentally fell looking for this, like, Yeti voice that he probably was hearing. I think that he did have good ears. I think he had good hearing.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe that's the best evidence for it, I think, is the Andrew stuff.
Before that, I think it's when Kusang, like, sees the Yeti and, like,
it's
runs.
Right around the same time. He sees it, he says,
I have seen what man
cannot see.
Yes.
I see what man must not see. I see true Yeti.
What it look like? What do you see? Kusang, tell me.
I see what man must not see. I see through Yeti. You made me see.
When Kusang does see the Yeti in the tent, he just runs all the way back to the temple. He's like, screw this, I'm not going to be here.
Yeah.
Around the same time, I think when they find that monkey and they capture it, Dr. Rollison's like, well, obviously this is not it. And Tom is just like, let's just say that's the Yeti.
Yeah.
Let's just lie and say that's the Yeti because I want to make money. And that's when, on one hand, you're like, all right, so Tom's the American. He's kind of like representing all the greater evils in the world, and that's fine. But you're also like, come on, dude, if you bring that rhesus monkey back in that cage and you tell people that is the Yeti, you're gonna get laughed out of business, man. Right. You're not gonna be able to pass that off. But this is when Rollison is just like, hey, we're not friends anymore. I know that you've actually like done some really shady things in the past. He tells a story about him basically like taking a handicapped child and telling people that he was like a monster to make money. So he seems pretty awful.
Some, like, children that he got a hold of that he like tried to pretend were raised by wolves.
Yeah, something like that.
And so that relationship kind of breaks down there.
The Indian wolf children, allegedly reared by wolves in the jungle, turned out to half the world, then turned out to be plain mental defectives.
All right, that's what the people wanted.
Another new concept for humanity. You're nothing but a cheap fairground trickster.
I don't like your bed. Get out of the radio!
Yeah, most of the back half is Mason.
The Yeti like take their gun or something?
The Yeti tries to take. That's when Kusang sees it. Is the fingers?
And he screams and it stops. So it's weird that it wanted their gun.
They're pretty upsetting fingers too. I have to say, I really found the Yeti's design to be really interesting in this film.
I thought they did a good job, and they were big. Like,
yeah, they were.
Every time you saw it, and they did a good job of like doing it with just the pieces of the Yeti at the beginning, where you just see an arm. Pretty much, but the arm was like the size of someone's body. Like I mean, I think we got like we talked about a little bit before the show. Like I think these might be the biggest like Bigfoot or Yeti that we've seen.
So Ed shoots one, and once he does that, that's when everyone's like, okay, there definitely is a Yeti. There's no more talk of like, is it or isn't it?
Well, one came and stole a monkey too, at the same time that the Kusang saw it, and the cage had been ripped open, so they knew there was something really strong out there. They were like, could be a bear, but yeah, by the time he shoots one, they're like, yes, definitely a Yeti.
Look at the cage. It's all twisted.
Definitely Yeti. That's when Dr. Rollison's like, on one hand, he's like, oh, their feet are bigger than I thought. And they're like, it's really interesting. But he's also like, we shot one. He's really sad about it.
They see two sets of footprints earlier, too. And one's bigger and one's smaller. So they were like, that kind of lended to the idea that there might be more than one, which there are.
There's this track. Hey, look at that. They're two different kinds.
Look at the size of it.
15, 16 inches long.
There's no doubt about it. There was something else here, too.
Yeah, there is like a society up here. I liked all the stuff of Dr. Rollison where he's like, oh, I found some moss. Maybe that's what they eat. Or he's always just so interested in who these creatures are, and when he looks at the dead one, he's like talking about his face, and he's like, oh, this thing looks like it was old and sad.
And wise or something like that. Like, he's looking at it, yeah, he comes up with this idea that the whole race of them are just sad.
Didn't you see what it looked like?
The face? Yes. Well, there's nothing ape-like about it. There's nothing human either, but I felt it had...
Go on.
A sadness, and it was probably only a surface resemblance. But wisdom.
I'd say the first half's a little dry, because we're kind of talking about things in theory. The second half, once they shoot the Yeti, it's much more about the other Yetis trying to get their dead friend, and the people in the group kind of being like, we're in danger. There's a blizzard coming. These things are really big, and they're like, keep getting closer, and things keep happening that are creepy. So they eventually come up with this plan that they're going to build a trap, and they're going to put Ed inside the cave in the trap.
This metal wire net that they're going to drop over the whole cave to kind of catch however many come in, and Ed's in there to like shoot them or like, you know, draw them in, and then they're on the outside to watch the cave entrance in case like Ed needs backup or whatever else. But of course the blizzard ruins all that. They can't see the cave entrance.
Yeah, it just goes horribly wrong, as you would expect.
Right.
And they get into the cave to find that the net has been torn asunder.
Right, this is a strong Bigfoot.
And then they see their friend Ed, who's dead. Ed died, and he's a pretty upsetting dead body. It's like, ooh, Ed looks like he had a bad time.
They're like, why didn't he shoot any of them? And then they discover, like...
that Tom's a jerk.
Yeah, John discovers that Tom loaded his gun with blanks because he didn't want him to actually kill any of the Yetis.
Because he wants a live one.
Right. And
dead
they even
ones...
said, like, isn't a dead one as good? And somebody's like, he was like, no, it's going to be alive.
No, we'll make more money with our living Yetis. So they run away. They bury their friend Ed next to Andrew in their little memorial graves. And then the end of the movie, they are holed up in the cave for the blizzard, and that's when Dr. Rawlinson hears the radio, but the radio's been smashed already, and that's, again, the mental powers. The Yetis are trying to trick them into leaving and abandoning all their gear and leaving their dead Yeti companion. And Tom is like, take some oxygen, you're going crazy. And then Tom starts hearing Ed's dead voice outside screaming, help me! And that's, again, the Yetis are doing this. The Yetis are doing this, and they lure Tom out into the storm, and Tom fires his gun like an idiot, because he's a dumb man. And the avalanche comes, which was presupposed earlier in the movie.
Right.
And that's how Tom dies. And I think that they clearly lured him out there to his death, and then he caused an avalanche.
Right, and I think that Andrew and Tom and Andrew and Tom and John were all suffering from like oxygen deprivation, because when John hears the radio and the other guy's like, you're crazy, the radio's broken, he's like, you're right, and he goes over and he does the oxygen, and then he's fine. And then the other guy starts hearing it, and he's like, hey, go get some oxygen or whatever, and he doesn't, and he's not fine.
So Tom dies. The end of the movie, Rawlinson goes back into his cave, and that's when you finally get to see the Yetis, because there's two of them in the cave. They're getting their friend. What did you think of the Yetis?
I thought they were cool. I thought the way they shot it was cool, too. You don't see them, like, great. They're more silhouetted, but they still look neat. They look imposing and scary.
They look upsetting, but they also have really interesting, like, their eyes and their nose. Like, you think back to when when John was looking at the dead one, and he was like, it looks like there's a history on their faces. This is not just an animal. And I think the effects team really delivered on that. So yeah, I think the movie's effects and the actual Yetis felt like they were worth it to get to.
After that, it kind of...
That's the end.
Ends pretty quickly. He leaves the cave. He's found by his wife and that party.
Helen and Foxy.
Freezing, but they take him back and they nurse him back to health, and he's fine. And then he talks to the llama one more time.
And what does he tell the llama?
He tells the llama that there is no Yeti. So he's kind of decided to keep their secret. I guess he's decided that they should inherit the Earth, and so he...
I think that he's just like, if anyone finds out that they're real, they're going to go and shoot them. So I'm just not... Or my personal take on it is that the Yetis brainwashed him with their power.
I'm afraid I was wrong. Wrong? What I was looking for does not exist.
You are certain of that?
Yes.
There is no Yeti.
You know, I think this one is one of the better movies that we've watched overall.
Yeah, for sure. I think technically I can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, maybe the best movie, technically speaking. Like, just, at least from the
Let's go ahead and give it...
cinematography.
We'll slap that award on it. This is the best looking movie that we have covered on the show.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the feel of Boggy Creek.
Yeah, it's the only other one that is
I don't know that that one looks more impressive than this one. It feels really nice.
No, you can like the 70s aesthetic more, but I don't think you can say that this film's not better shot than that film.
I mean, this clearly had more money behind it, or at least more ability to get those shots.
It had the Hammer team. It had a team of veteran British filmmakers that just knew what they were doing. And I think to the film's detractment, it is a little dry. It is very British.
Yeah,
it is a little...
if you like some of those, like, 2000s Bigfoot killer movies, you might not like this very much. If you really like the way those operate, like
if you can't wait for Bigfoot, if you can't sit through a whole movie knowing you're going to see him at the very end, and that's got to be okay, right? Because it's a waiting game, and you have to be interested in those conversations that go on.
My take on that too is like, based on what we've seen so far, like waiting for him to appear till the very end and only getting glimpses of him leading up to it
seems to work better, doesn't it?
I don't know that it works better. I think that's like, you end up getting about as much Bigfoot in those movies as you do in the ones where he's like present throughout. Like, there's very few of these movies do you get very much. I don't think we've ever had even 10 minutes.
No. The record holder
Bigfoot is like 8 minutes or something like that, or 9 minutes. It's
5:35.
Right?
Yeah, it's Bigfoot or bust.
Ready? No.
I'm just saying, if that's the reason you're going to skip this one, I think that like you might as well skip most of the other ones up to this point either. I mean, I guess he's in it like less than 1 minute this time, but is that much different from 2 minutes or 3 minutes if all he's doing is walking around and looking at stuff? I'll say that I like that this one made me feel like these people had to deal with the perils of being in this place. And like something like Yeti from last time, that did not make me feel that way. I did not feel like those people were in danger.
Check back in here once a day, even if you don't hear from us.
10-4, roger.
How many days until they send somebody to look for us?
They won't.
These sets from the 50s, because there's some of them, are a lot of sets, still feel like that cave that they're in feels more realistic than that plane crash from 2008. They just have that extra little bit of magic, and it goes a really long way. I'm going to say for social value. So this might not be the first Bigfoot Yeti movie, but I do think it's easily the most consequential of the early ones, because I think you can see some parallels that came from this and the other films we've covered, expeditions to the Himalayas,
or to other snowy mountainous regions.
Talk of like the morality of finding Bigfoot, like hunters that want to bag Bigfoot, your big game hunter guy.
Between, a good reason to look for this creature and a bad reason to look for this creature. The idea that Bigfoot doesn't want to be found.
Yeah.
We've seen that in a couple movies, and this one kind of posits the same thing about this whole group of Yeti, is that they don't want people to know they're there because they're waiting to, inherit the earth or whatever.
Oh, I forgot to mention, this actually started life as a TV drama. It was, on the BBC night, some kind of a televised thing that had, Peter Cushing and a couple of the other actors in it. So it's technically a remake of a TV episode.
Ah.
But there's also, I think, a pretty strong callback to it, or homage to it, in The Mighty Boosh. They have an episode called The Call of the Yeti that I think agrees with me that the Yeti has some kind of telekinetic powers and influences the choices of the characters in that show. I do want to put a little asterisk here. I hate that show. I'm not happy that that's my example. But they're doing this.
We've got the team of, scientists, doctors, whatever. That's common in the stuff that we've seen.
Yeah, I like the expeditions.
We've got the connection to, ancient culture in that area, or, older cultures in that area. We see that a lot in the American ones with, Native American legends. We saw that kind of with Takahe and, whatever one that was.
Claude.
Claude. So I think that we've seen that aspect of trying to tie it into local culture.
Oh, also, is once again keeping in line with the history of Bigfoot movies, there are multiple titles for this film.
Oh, yeah.
That's
another big thing. What else is it called besides the...
Well, the actual title is The Abominable Snowman. Yeah. So you can see on the reverse of the cover here, but it was released in America, they decided to add Of the Himalayas.
Look at the size of it. 15, 16 inches long.
I'll come.
What's your rating?
I think that I'm going to have to give The Abominable Snowman 4 big feet.
4 big feet. This
is tied with Abominable 2006, I believe, as my highest rated.
What about Boggy Creek, the original?
Oh, did I give that? I think I might have probably gave that one 4 as well.
Well, that's nice. I thought you'd like it. I'm going to give this movie 4.5 big feet, and I believe that might be my highest rating as well. I think it's not quite a great film. I don't think it's quite a great film. I think it's a really good one, though. I think it's really atmospheric and moody, and you can watch it with just about anyone and have a good time. Let's talk about the titular Abominable Snowman. Neither snow nor men. This race of beings is posited to be... How did they phrase it again?
Like a separate branch of evolution that comes off of the human line, not even the human line, but
the sapien,
the predecessor, the common ancestor, I should say, between apes and humans is shared. This thing is these snowmen are also come from that common ancestor.
So they live at. Did we ever get a precise elevation in this movie?
I don't believe they said. But they live in the mountains. They live in the Himalayas. I mean, he talks about how he thinks that they have... Rawlinson talks about how he thinks that they've adapted to live in this area. So maybe they didn't initially look like that, but they've adapted their white coats and, ability to live in the cold.
White coats? Did you get the impression that they're coats were white. I got a brown vibe. It's black and white. So
yeah, it's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
And when we do see their full bodies, it's in a cave. So there's even like shadows beyond that. So
we know exactly they're 10.5 feet tall, 650 pounds.
I don't know if it's exactly, because they saw the 2 sets of prints at one point.
They have the dead body they look at, though. That's like what he was telling them. He's like, we found the dead body. He's telling Andrew.
Well, yeah, that one's 10.5 feet tall. But, like, that one specifically. Like,
Okay.
They might be varying sizes.
There's a society of them working in tangent towards a common goal of, is it survival? Is it waiting for mankind to go out? It seems like they have a grasp on the existential threats of the day.
Right. They don't seem to want to be found by people. They seem to want to be, like, hiding up here, waiting up here, is what Rollison says, and the movie kind of gives some evidence to support that that's what they want.
They definitely have treatment of the dead, and that
Yes.
they are actively looking to get the corpse of their fallen comrade back.
And we've seen that with some of our movies before, but yeah, these ones also seem to revere their dead.
They do get killed by bullets, is something that we've seen a lot recently.
They have a loud howl that they like to do that can be heard for quite a ways.
We do have a defined food source here. There's the moss that he finds. There's small animals.
Right, they talk about
the monkeys that live here.
Right, it comes and grabs the monkeys, presumably eats it. Oh, we know they're strong. You probably expected that. But it does break out of a trap.
Of
a
titanium
spring trap,
net.
and it breaks out of the net trap that's titanium, so yeah.
We can also say that this is the first time that we've seen the Yetis or the Big Feet have clairvoyant powers, where they could talk, they could get into your mind, and they could communicate with you in ways that other people couldn't hear. So, like, you think that the radio's on, radio's smash. That's Bigfoot. He's in your head.
That's debatable. That's debatable, whether that's that or lack of oxygen that does that. But, yeah, we also know that they live in groups, as we've seen in a couple of our other films.
Because I think these are our biggest Big Feet so far.
They do appear to be the biggest ones. I mean, we've had ones that have claimed that their Big Feet are like 12 feet tall, but I don't think we've ever seen it actually look like that on screen.
That's true.
So I think this appears to be, from both of our eyes, the largest Big Feet that we've seen.
Come on, Ed, we gotta keep this pace up.
Welcome to SasqWatch, where we crunch the numbers. Where we crunch the crunch. Where we crunch the crunch. Welcome to SasqWatch, where we crunch the numbers. So in this film, which takes place in the Himalayas, almost definitely in Tibet, we have up to 3 Yetis, or Big Feet, or Sasquatches, potentially more. They kind of allude to there being more. They appear collectively for 58 seconds in the film, 28 of which is a dead Yeti. We'll call it a deady. And they kill, depending on your take on the movie, whether or not they've got, psychic powers, 0 to 3 people. And that's it for SasqWatch.
Well, that was a nice episode. It was certainly a pleasure to revisit this film. I hope that some of our viewers will choose to, watch this for the first time as well. It'd be nice to be able to expose someone to a good movie.
Yeah, if you only know Peter Cushing from Star Wars, here he is in something else.
Yeah. So, all right, we're halfway through, Adam. How are you feeling about Season 2?
Season 2? It's going well, I suppose. I mean, it feels like it's not halfway over yet, but we'll have to see how the rest of it feels. I mean,
so far we've gone through all that porn we watched. I hope people didn't forget about that. How would you feel about doing a twofer next? Two films at once.
Oh, that's going to trigger my law.
I know, but we've had a lot of Yetis. What about 2 films that deal with something a little different, though?
Well, okay. What is the next one? It can't be porn.
Can't be porn. I mean, I don't believe that there's anything pornographic about either of these films. But if Bo Svensson takes his pants off, we'll have that talk when it happens. Have you ever heard of a snow beast?
Well, like a Yeti?
SasqWatch. Other people are going to watch this movie and they're going to be like, it's obvious that the Yetis have mental powers.
I think the movie's way better, like, at saying what it's trying to say if they don't have those powers.